Let's look at another trinomial problem that we want to factor. Let's take the terms 5 plus 4y minus y squared and factor it. The first step on the factoring trinomials worksheet that you have says to rearrange, if needed, to match the given form. What that means is that I want the squared term to be listed first, the variable term that's not squared in the middle, and the whole number constant with no variable on the end. So let's rearrange this. Let's move the y squared to the beginning, but we also have to bring the negative sign along because it goes with that term. The plus 4y is going to stay in the middle, but I need this 5, which is a positive 5, to be at the end. So now I have my three terms in the given form that I need in order to use this method. Now let's identify the a, the b, and the c. A is the coefficient of the first term, b is the coefficient of the middle term, c is the whole number constant. In this problem, a is really that negative sign, which stands for a -1. b is 4 and c is 5. So I need to find what two numbers multiply together to give me a times c. A is -1 and c is 5, so I need two numbers that multiply together to give me -5, but that they're going to add together to give me b, which is 4. What two numbers multiply together to give me -5? Well, in order to be negative, one of the two numbers has to be negative and the other one is positive. So I could have a -1 and a positive 5. I could also have a -5 and a positive 1. That would be the only combination that would multiply together to give me a -5. But which of those two is going to add together to give me a positive 4? That would be one where the larger of the two numbers is positive. So what I need to set up my problem is the -1 and the positive 5. So we're going to use the trinomial in the way that it was rewritten, where we had the y squared term first and the constant term last. And we're going to leave the first term alone, the -y squared, and we're going to leave the last term alone, that plus 5. And what we're going to do next is rewrite my middle term using a -1 and a positive 5 as my coefficients. So if I have a -1y and a plus 5y, I now have those four terms. And I can look to see that I did not change the value of my problem, because -1y plus 5y would combine together to give me a positive 4y. Now what I want to show you is that someone could have solved this problem, and instead of writing -1 first and the 5 second, they could have very easily found the positive 5 first and then the -1. Are those the same thing? Sure, because the plus 5y minus 1y would still combine to give me 4y. However, depending on how you factor either one of those things, your answers could turn out to be a little bit different. So this is a very good example of a problem that when you factor, you could end up with a different answer than someone else, or a different answer than is shown in your solutions manual or the back of your textbook, and the solutions still be completely correct the way they're written. So I'm going to show you, we're going to look at how to factor both of these by grouping so that you can see how the answers look a little bit different. Let's start with this first one. We have the -y squared minus 1y plus 5y plus 5. Let's take those four terms and factor by grouping. Well, looking at the first two terms, I've decided to, well, let's divide out that negative sign and a y. So if I do that, that'll leave me with y and a plus 1. In order to get the y plus 1 to match over here, I would have to divide out a 5. 5y plus 5. So now my answer would be y plus 1 times -y plus 5. And if you multiply those two binomials together, you will get the trinomial that we started the problem with. So, let's take the second problem that we had. We had negative y squared, and then the plus 5y was first, and the minus 1y was second. So what happens here? Let's take those four terms and factor by grouping. Let's take the let's take just a y out this time and see what happens. Let's go ahead and take a negative out like we did last time, actually. If we take a negative y out, the negative and one of the y's is gone. And then here, I divided out a negative, so I need to put a negative 5 here, because a negative times a negative would give me that plus 5y. So on this side, if I want to end up with a y minus 5 over here also, I would have to divide out a negative 1. Negative 1 times y would be negative 1y. Negative 1 times negative 5 would be plus 5. So when I divide out a y minus 5, I'm left with negative y minus 1. That is a correct answer. So let me bring down the other answer that we found before. We had a y plus 1 and a negative y plus 5. So let's look at those two answers. The two answers are very similar. Y minus 5 and negative y plus 5 are only different by both signs being different. And y plus 1 and negative y minus 1, those are both the same terms, only a negative 1 different. So you could get different looks to your answers, but if you multiply out either one of those solutions, they're both completely correct.